when you're able to see and understand and you get a taste of that impact, it becomes very exciting and actually draws you in, pulls you into it. One of the things that I wanted to just sort of take a step back and clarify for people that are listening that may not understand a little bit of, how would you define quickly for them, like what are special forces, special operations? What does that really entail?
Well, we have our Defense Department. We've got different service branches, so you're familiar with Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, now Space Force. And so the special operations is a service-like component inside of our Defense Department. And then inside of that special operations community, every branch of service has their own variant of special operations, whether that's Navy SEALs or Army Rangers, Army Green Berets, or Air Force Special Tactics soldiers. So all of the branches kind of bring part of what that unique special operations combined community is in their specific service application of that. And then you see those come together, what we call the Joint Force. And so a lot of the Joint Special Operations really takes those as combined individual skills, not like how you combine a lot of the go-to-market functions of a tech company and then leverage them for that kind of outsized impact at a minimal cost from a resourcing standpoint, from a force projection standpoint.
You're right. The concept of a go-to-market team where you need an account manager, somebody who's relationship focused, right? On the ground, creating alliances, creating partnerships. Then you bring in your sales engineer, technically focused, showing what are the capabilities we can deliver. Then there's going to be, implementation partners, all these things, right? There is a direct corollary. So now I'm getting the clarity of where it makes sense for you as a go-to-market leader. You're really mapping some of the same skills that you learned before.
What's even cooler for me is you're seeing impact still, right? And that's why I think, all of us are really looking for. There's lots of different ways and levels in which you can have that impact. But if you're building something of value and you can bring that in a cohesive way out into the marketplace or into the environment you're operating in, you can have a real outsized impact. And I think, that's the things when you think about legacy and you think about what am I doing here on Earth to make things around me better, people, my relationships, the organizations. There's been a great marriage between those two. The implementations are often very different. Some of even the skills required are different, but there's this massive overlapping and almost foundational aspect between the two.
And so going back to your story, I know that as the war on terror kicked off, I think for myself, I was part of a disruptive technology here on the civilian side, cloud technology, when I transitioned from working from traditional ERPs like PeopleSoft to Salesforce.com in 2004. And I know that there was a huge operational disruption that happened really in theater, which, I read Stanley McChrystal's Team of Teams, where the way that the Army was structured, the military was structured to execute, you had to truly start disrupting that. Was that something that you were a part of, that you got to see and participate as you refactored literally the way you operated?
Yeah, and what's interesting about that kind of corollary, it was a lot of that was certainly accelerated, if not enabled by technology. So in the past, if you think about means of communication, both interpersonal and relaying a commander's intent or sending specific, guidance, the standard kind of forms of that communication was certainly accelerated by things like, video teleconferences. So when Stanley McChrystal is thinking teams of teams, yes, he's thinking about the fact that he's got people out and all these kind of embedded, we called them liaisons or liaison officers. They were in all these adjacent companies, so to speak, or organizations, but really it was the technology that accelerated that, was the ability to chat among teams literally globally. It was the ability to hop on a VTC video teleconferencing back in the day. This was before COVID made it, kind of business practice. The ability to take common shared information and then propagate that out for the kind of execution level tasks that were needed, and that coordination, that was what he was orchestrating from a concept, but really technology was the main conduit that was enabling.
I love that story. I think it's fascinating because when I read it, it seemed to me that some of the processes that he was adopting was almost like a daily stand-up meeting, what you actually see in agile development in software. I'm just trying to understand, because I know that a lot of software, a lot of development happens civilian, goes to military, and vice versa. I'm curious if any of that process came from agile development or agile development came from that. I don't know if you know.
Yeah, I'm not sure the true lineage. I would say it's effective communication, right? So I think people quickly adopt common concepts that are effective for getting at value and impact. For that particular time and place, that was a really impactful way of communicating. That stand up, it almost kind of forced it into a more truncated form of communication, right? Because we couldn't have now 150 people all giving 15-minute speeches, right? Like this needed to distill it down, tell people what adjacent organizations need to know, get guidance from the control tower, so to speak, and then be able to go back and implement on a daily basis. Very similar to the how do we build an agile, responsive software development process.